Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Power. I give it to him. The glory. I give it to him. Forever. I give it to him. And ever. I give it to him. The power. I give it to him. The glory. I give it to him. Forever. I give it to him. And ever. I give it to him.
Hey everybody, welcome. This is the Bold and the Beautiful. We are here right now. We are getting ready to start our broadcast, and I'm Curtis Austin, and we are now on the When Christians Speak Talk Radio. We air every second Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. Won't you just tune in and welcome to When Christians Talk Radio, Bold and the Beautiful.
If it wasn't for God, I'd be weak. I wouldn't wake up from my sleep. I wouldn't have nothing to eat. I wouldn't be so unique. If it wasn't for God, I would lose it. I wouldn't live under a roof, and I wouldn't be up in this booth, and I wouldn't know He is the truth. And if it wasn't for God, I would have been bold. The enemy would have taken my soul, but now I rise up and I surprise them like the day that He rose. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be up in these foreign cars on the way to my shows. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't have nada. I wouldn't be cold. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't have clothes, no shoes to cover my toes, no hat to cover my head. If it wasn't for God, I would have been. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be counted out. My family down and out. I'm blessed so without a doubt. Gotta make sure I shout it out. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Bold and Beautiful is a talk show designed to bring the Word of God to youth and young adults around the world and embolden them to live out loud for Jesus. Our vision is to see young people of the world rising up to take their rightful place as leaders and world changers.
I'm a young girl spitting that gospel. Last time I talked to God, He said, I got you. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And they try to act like they never knew you, but the devil can't do nothing to you. 'Cause the power, I give it to Him. The glory, I give it to Him. Forever, I give it to Him. And ever, I give it to Him. The power, I give it to Him. The glory, I give it to Him. Forever, I give it to Him. And ever, I give it to Him. The power, I give it to Him. The glory, I give it to Him. Forever, I give it to Him. And ever, I give it to Him.
Hello, here we are again, y'all. This is another Bold and Beautiful podcast. I am here on my lonesome today. I don't have my co-host with me, so it's just me, Jordana Cunningham, coming to you again for another show. And I have a new family member, friend, brother, second favorite cousin, Jude, out here in these streets. You see him dancing. He's ready. He's ready today. So let me just give y'all real quick. I just met this beautiful young man at a work conference, and apparently he's never met a stranger. So it seems like after the first hellos and introductions, we was kind of glued at the hip, and we had an excellent time. He was actually a presenter at the conference that I attended, and I was like, I got to have this man on my podcast. He got some stuff to say. He got some stuff to say. So I'm gonna let him give his bio real quick. Just give a little bio, who you are, what you out here doing in life, and then we'll get into it.
Quick bio. Man. So my name is Jude David. I wear many hats. So professionally, I am the statewide program manager for the Massachusetts Probation Training Division. That's just a really fancy word of just saying I train people to do all sorts of stuff. I am also have a whole lot of part-time. So I'm also in nightlife and entertainment. I'm a DJ, I'm a club promoter. I sit on a couple of boards like the West Indian Carnival Committee board here for Boston. I am a real estate investor. I am just trying to live my best life, you know.
Out here in these streets.
Hoochie daddy shirts and everything.
Hoochie daddy season? What?
Hoochie daddy season, you know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to live my best life. That's it. I'm a national speaker. I'm a national trainer and a national motivational speaker as well. So I do a little bit of traveling here and there.
Mm-hmm. He be all over the world, yo. That's cool. I'm all over the world. I'm all over the world.
My mileage is going up. You know, my flight mileage is going up.
Yeah. He's also a father.
I am. If anybody's looking for little toddlers, let me know. I will hand them off, gift you, tax free.
Don't let him fool you. Y'all don't let him
New,
fool you.
slightly used, but almost new. I promise. I'll just gift you the kids.
He is so in love, he don't know what to do with himself. Okay, real talk. Okay, so we are going to get started. Like, where am I going to start? Right. So I know a little bit of your backstory, and it's funny how, in life, you don't know that even some of the bad decisions you made, or some of the, like, how was I living like that? Some of those things even propel you and prepare you for where you are like today. So take us back to like growing up in your neighborhood. Take us back to times when maybe you weren't even making like maybe the best decisions, and then what that looks like now, like how you are using even some of the stuff that you did back then to inform how you show up now.
Oh shit, I still ain't making no good decisions. That never left. So I've had a really, what I call, standard African American immigrant single family household background. I grew up in inner city Boston. Mattapan at the time was called Murderpan. It was like Mattapan, Dorchester area. And my dad left when I was in like 5th grade. So like, honestly, my father figures was Jay-Z and Uncle Phil, to be honest with you. Yeah. It was a whole lot of gang. You know what I'm saying? And you're in the community, a lot of immigrants. So my family's from Haiti. So a lot of Haitian immigrants, they stop in one of 3 places. It's majority Miami, Florida, New York, Connecticut, or Massachusetts, Boston. So my family just ended up in Boston, and a lot of other West Indian communities as well. There's a whole lot of Jamaicans, Bajans, Antiguans, Haitians. There's just a lot. So obviously with that, and the lack of, honestly, all our parents came over in their 30s. So they pretty much still belong to that island. Right. They're just bringing that island to America. So there was a lot of struggle, like going home and living in Haiti, but literally stepping out of your house and being in America. Yeah. So that came with struggle. And the only way that I found myself to be kind of remotely accepted was gang life. You know what I mean? So, there was a lot of, I was really good into sports. So the one good thing is back in the 90s, it was kind of like, it's before, now we got a whole bunch of little kids running gangs and shit like that. But in the 90s, it was more so like, there were guys that used to be like, yo, nope, going to court. I'm like, no, ain't you supposed to be home? Go home, young blood. Like, there was a lot of the older mans there that would kind of not allow me to get too engaged into the streets. My mom was always kind of sick. She had a kidney failure. So she had renal failure, and she was on dialysis for 9 years. And then through dialysis, she ended up getting a kidney transplant when I was in high school. So she was kind of always sick. So the streets kind of raised me. So that came with a lot of bad decisions, man. DYS, which is Department of Youth Services. It came with, like, to me, it's kind of like I'm not working at Stop and Shop when I can just go on Oakcrest Road, pick up a backpack and drop it off on Blake Street and make $300. Don't look inside the backpack, just drop it off. Right. I'm gonna make $300. So, the streets ended up, I got big into the streets up until I saw my man get killed. I was probably 12 or 13. We was on the court. And you know how it is on the blacktop. When you playing in the hood, you playing in the hood. So my man, I remember it was yesterday. It was like, you called a foul, the dude argued against it. He was like, yo, that's a bitch call. Oh, dude looked at him and said, what? So that's a bitch call. You went to the sidewalk. Bow, bow. Game over. It's kind of like what you see in the movies is not really what it looks like. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was like, I legitimately remember that. Like, I'm sitting here. That's the first time I got shot as well. First time. That's the only time I got shot. But what ended up happening was, like, I'm with the guy, and the bullet, as soon as the bullet enters, it's like a red cloud kind of like how LeBron does this
Mm-hmm,
before every game. That's what you see, just a red cloud, and then it's like blood, just oozing. Like the visual still sticks with. And honestly, it's like his legs kept running, but his body just kept tipping forward. That was it. I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. This ain't Call of Duty. There ain't no coming back from me.
Right,
You know
right.
what I'm saying? And you know, I ended up getting shot as well one time. A ricochet bullet hit me. That was a crazy story, by the way. You know, shout out to my sister. Shout out to my sister's boyfriend at the time. Because, you know, you talking about first generation immigrant families. They don't know much about the law. They don't know much about medicine. They don't know much about much.
The healthcare
So
system.
all they know is don't get in trouble.
Nope, don't get caught up.
Don't get caught up. So, you know, when it was a ricochet bullet that bounced off of a brick that caught me. And I remember running home, and my boy was like, yo, you good? I was like, like I was good up until I saw it. Once I saw it, it was over. So, like, you know, my sister's man at the time worked at a hospital, and like they drove me to the hospital. I'm like bleeding out on this couch. They had black trash bags on the thing. I'm like 13, 14. And like legit, he took a bottle. Shout out my man. I don't want to say your name because he's still working the hospital.
You know who you are, sir.
Yeah, you know who you are, sir. We ended up buying like a bottle of like tequila. He told me to drink. I'm like 13, 14. He's like, drink it until I tell you to stop. So I'm drinking it, I'm spitting it out because it's nasty. He's like, drink it, keep drinking until I tell you to stop. So I drank like half the bottle. He poured the other half on the wound, took a lighter and some regular scissors. And obviously, like, if people don't know what happens when you get shot, it doesn't really hurt, it burns. Right? It's hot. And your skin starts to cauterize because of the heat from the bullet pressure. So he burnt the scissors to cut around to get the skin off, and then use like sewing thread and needle. So not like stitching me, like cotton thread.
Yeah.
So much. Yeah. So it's like I was heavy in the streets for a little bit, but after the shootings, I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. And I was just kind of fortunate enough that I was always good in basketball, where I just had mentors that eventually got wind of a really big prep school. I'm talking about, it was like nationally ranked at the time. When I got to high school, I got to high school in 2002. So it was nationally ranked at the time, like the basketball powerhouse. You know, they had 2 McDonald's All-Americans. 3 of the players went to ABCD camp, which was a huge camp at the time. And yeah, I got recruited for basketball, and I never looked back into the streets. But I always kind of played that role of being in the streets, but not, you know what I'm saying? Because I lived in the hood. So like I would have to get to work. I would have to get to school. So I would have to go pie the hoods.
Right.
And people knew who I was, and they knew kind of I was a ball player, let them rock. So it's kind of like the different hoods kind of always rocked with me, never really worried about like gang affiliations, because it was kind of like he was good. Up until college, and then college, it was kind of like, you know, everybody was getting killed, or everybody was, you know, moving out, or everybody's going to jail. And I was just like, yo, like, what's going on with our community?
Right.
Like, what is going on with our community? And why is it that we are acting like the way people want us to act? Like, yo, we're not supposed to be living like this. And then, you know, I made that conscious effort to try to I joined criminal justice with a great intent, which was to be like, to bridge the gap between our communities and law enforcement. And it was like, I didn't realize, like, that's a tall task.
Yeah, it is.
That's a tall task. And it's like, it's hard for people that are so used to being in the mud, or like an expression that I use a lot is like it's so hard. Like, people won't smell the shit until they're sitting in it. And that's an expression that I've used a lot, because it's a lot of it to deal with our communities. It's like, we don't realize how bad that we allow ourselves to get through, of course, systemic racism, oppression, you know, lack of resources, lack of job opportunities.
Yeah.
Black women get paid 68 cents on the dollar compared to a white man. Like this, I understand there's different facets of it, which cause us to kind of bring ourselves back into this shadow world of, like, you know, hatred or anger, or ratchetness or gangsterness or whatever it is. But like after a while, it was just like, I was like, all right, no, I got to influence, man. If I had a purpose, is to kind of spread influence and figure out a way to open up people's third eyes to realize that, yo, we are great and we need to really stop living. Don't mean you got to change who you are. You know,
Absolutely.
you can still be who you are, but we got to do better for ourselves. And that's when I started doing the motivational speaking and the public speaking. And, you know, when I started really focusing on my relationship with spirituality, things started to take off. And then I met you and we had a great time.
Yeah, we did. You know what? And let's get into millennials versus everybody, because this podcast is designed to, you know, to give voice to younger generations. So me and my co-hosts all have, and I know I don't look it, but I am not a millennial. I am firmly
definitely past for one.
I'm firmly a Gen Xer. So I definitely understand the conversations around how younger generations are viewed and how we have so many negative connotations to them, and how we even show up as people, as generations of people. We show up and we're afraid of the children that we raised. I'm like, but these are your kids. So why are you acting like this on the train? That's your kid. Y'all raised that kid that you afraid to talk to.
Absolutely.
So I will say, Jude did a breakout session at the conference that I went to called Millennials versus Everybody. And he really challenged the popular opinions that older generations, mine, baby boomers, silent generation, that we have, and these negative connotations we put on these younger generations. Of course, millennials, these, what are they, Gen Zs, all these little children. These 35 and under kids. He's 35 and under kids. We talk about them. Let's
little teeny boppers.
You know, we talk about them. And so he really challenged our own personal biases. And the funny thing is, he really did bring to light the fact that we are the ones who raised the children that we're complaining about. So how is it we're complaining about the children we raised? Because we raised them with the value system that they have. So the way they show up in the world is a lot to do with what we gave them and what we provided for them. And he challenged us to look at some of their value systems differently. Like, and I definitely know, like, I was definitely a person who, like, you know, you gotta scrape and struggle and strive and put the work in. And these children are out here and they can become a millionaire overnight. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. But what we need to do, what our generation has lacked, that other generations, even before mine, were better at, is they've mentored better, right? I feel like, you know, just like you said, when you were coming up, you had the OGs were like, nah, young blood, don't you need to go home? Don't you, you know what I mean? We're not doing that anymore. We're not doing that in the streets. We're not doing that professionally. We're not doing that in our homes. We just kind of say, we raise you, and then we're like, all right, go out into the world. And there is still so much, what is the word? So much value in maintaining relationships, and not necessarily like mentoring, but just being there as a sounding board to provide advice and guidance. And, you know, I tried this, it didn't quite work, but you can see it. You can try it. You might come up with a different outcome. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, why don't you very quickly speak to the whole millennial versus everything?
Cool. So that actually, believe it or not, that manifested into something huge, and that was just like God. That was like divine intervention. So I ended up, you know, I was doing little speaking engagements here, like a Pop Warner football team here, a high school basketball team here, like a little doing small stuff until I got the opportunity to present at APPA. If people don't know what APPA stands for, it stands for the American Probation and Parole Association. It's a national association that encompasses all probation and parole. There's over hundreds of thousands of members. We talk about chiefs, judges, state representatives. Like, this is a really, really huge organization. So I was just gifted the opportunity to present there. And one of the things that I always try to do is I try to always incorporate my personality into everything that I do. And especially when it comes to this field, because there's a really big age gap in the workforce. You know what I'm saying? You got baby boomers that are usually at the elite top, the executives, the chiefs, the regional managers, the senior managers. You may have a couple of, 40, late 30s, early 40s, maybe late 40-year-olds, the Gen Xers might be tickling that, social class, but the majority of everything else goes to late Gen Xers and millennials. There's a great area in the age gap. And one of the things that I always said to myself was, first of all, I need to start thinking like white folks, because just to be honest, there's, again, when it comes to employment, there are so many different disparities when it comes to race. When it comes to, black men and white men, there's a disparity in the wages. There's a disparity in, executive senior level positions. Like if you start looking at Fortune 500 companies, I believe out of all of the Fortune 500 companies, there's only like 2 Black CEOs out of all the Fortune 500 companies. So it's kind of like I started thinking about ways to connect. And one of the things that kind of was a big stick out to me was when you start going into these work conferences, when you start going to speak, especially in realms of like criminal justice, like it can get kind of mundane, like it can get kind of boring.
Correct.
Like it's really like it's informational.
Yeah.
And there's a purpose to it. It's informational. You're supposed to learn something. But like millennials and some of us and a majority of us, like we retain more information when we're engaged. So like one of the things that I've always tried to do was always try to be myself and be engaging. And when I came up with the topic, it was more so because it started off as an argument. I was at a cookout with like my uncles, and everybody's uncle and auntie, by the way. So I was at a cookout with uncle, and they were they played Tastes Like Candy, like they played that. And the OGs was up and the aunties were shaking with their bad hips and everything, and they were just moving.
No, don't do that to their hips. Don't do that to their hips.
They were shaking with their bad hips. And then I was like, no, I got a record. I played the wobble. And then the kids started doing the wobble. And then he came on and he played that Frankie Beverly, Before I Let You Go. He played that Frankie Beverly. I said, all right, cool. So then I turned around and played Belvic DeVoe, Poison. And then we kept going back and forth. But, it was just like me versus Unc, just having fun. But I was realizing, like, legitimately, it was unifying the OGs and the new kid and the millennials. And I'm like, yo, this is dope. And then it kind of like, that idea came like, I want to do something to help bridge that gap. And then it kind of connected because I'm like, in a professional capacity too, because my goal is to eventually, be a commissioner or leader of public department where I can institute change based off of my vantage point in growing up, which is completely different than 99.99% of the other commissioners that have been all white men from suburbia or people of privilege compared to me who grew up from the mud. So like my goal would always be to become somebody where I can, have the authority to set that change. And I think that, once that cookout happened, I was like, all right, I want to do this professionally. So I started just coming up with brainstorming ideas and having conversations with people, seeing how things kind of fit. And then, the biggest thing that I took back from it was, all right, how do I connect the older generation to be like, we're not what y'all think we are just because we do things differently. Like it's completely, there are 5 different ways to get to work. Don't mean that just because you take the highway, there's not different routes to get to work. Right. I could get to where I need to be doing things my way. Like Jay-Z has a quote that said, ain't nothing wrong with the target. You just got to change your aim. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, all right, I'm going to do it this way. And then I kind of did it in a sense where I wanted to not only make it fun and interactive, but I always wanted to bring it back to like, listen, your generation has flaws as well. like all of our parents were taught from the baby boomers generation. That's like the 40s, the 50s, like taught from them. And at that time era, they were in a time in America or wherever they were where, you know, we just finished and wrapping up the war. Women, I mean, when you look at, I think women were only allowed to vote not until like the 1920s. Women were allowed to vote. Black women, I think, were allowed to vote in like the 1920s, I believe. Like they were just certain like you couldn't dress a certain way back in that day. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You couldn't talk a certain way. Sex wasn't as open as it is now. So all of that they're used to got brought onto our parents. Then our parents dealt with that. And then the crack epidemic, then the super predators by Ronald Reagan. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, the civil rights movement, the Black Panthers, and the deliberate removal of African-American men out of the communities and the neighborhoods. So then they had to deal with that struggle with the same struggle of being conservative to now that, you know what I'm saying? So then now that's what we're learning. And to believe it, that's all toxic behavior. That's all toxic behavior. Like in order for us to be free is considered inappropriate to our grandparents because it wasn't like that in
Right.
their time era.
Right,
And
right.
in order for us to express ourselves freely, it's considered inappropriate to our parents because it wasn't like that in that time era. Like the Black Lives Matter movement is very intimidating to our parents' generations because they dealt with the civil rights movement. So for them, when they would say something like defund the police or, you know, racism, this, racism, that, they were getting fire hosed, dogs ripping them apart. They were getting sent to jail. So that trauma with them, it's not the same trauma for us. Like for us, we are not our ancestors. And I say that, right? And I say that, and I say it both ways because when I say we're not our ancestors, meaning like we're not going to just sit here and allow this to happen and be afraid to voice our opinions. That's what I mean by we're not our ancestors, because back in that day, if you said something, police would straight up, you know,
Yeah, you might disappear.
You might disappear.
Yeah.
When I say we're not, that's what I mean by we're not our ancestors. However, I got checked recently by OG when I made that comment. He pulled me to the side. He said, "Yeah, bro, aren't you Haitian?" He's like, I was like, "Yeah." He said, "So you are your ancestor." I was like, "Why you say that?" He said, "Isn't your ancestors the first Black republic in the world? Like, didn't you guys set the blueprint? Didn't you guys, y'all whipped the French, y'all whipped the Spaniards, y'all whipped y'all? So you have a rebellious spirit in your blood, right?" I was like, "I'm about to change I am my ancestors." Like, you know, like, so shout out to
The original rebels.
Yeah, the original rebels. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of incorporate that into a presentation, and then honestly, I freestyled a lot of it right then and there in front of hundreds of people, and I caught a standing ovation, and I was like floored on how receptive people were towards how I broke down different perspective of millennials. Like, we're not lazy. Just because we rather work from home than drive to work doesn't make us lazy. It actually, to me, with these gas prices, makes us very smart. These gas prices are killing me. You know what I mean? Just
so
because
it sounds like all of the things, even though you may not even have seen it in the moment, right? But all of the things were a part of the story that allowed you to walk through the doors that you walk through, right? Like everything, how it all like lines up. It's just like when you're walking in purpose, it's like, oh, this is working. Oh, this is really working. Oh, this is really moving. Oh, I'm really moving. And it's all of these things along the way, even though they might not have been the best experiences or they might not have been the best decisions, but they are all a part of the story that got you to where you are today. And now I have a question. When you were talking, it sparked a thought and an idea. Do you think that like millennials and Gen Zs as a generation are less racist than older generations? Do you feel like because, first of all, you know, when you just think about like hip hop culture and how not only just in America, but like hip hop culture, you see it in every other continent on the planet. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So even though they may not love us specifically who created hip hop, it is something that has influenced everything. And I feel like I haven't looked up any stats, and I don't know if you have either, but I'm wondering if the way you all grew up as a generation, that is your generation less racist because there was more mixing, there was more introduction to like hip hop and things that are historically, Black or African American. Do you feel like they're less racist?
I think that depends on the topic of conversation.
Ah, okay.
I think when it comes to things like music, I think absolutely. I mean, I was at a Kanye concert and there was more white people screaming nigga than Black people because it's in the music.
Right.
And Black people just, Black people is just like, it's music. So it's like literally standing next to the white folks in the concert. So, da 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 da, nigga, and they just looking, oh yeah, all right, you know the words. Oh, he's cool. That's Tommy Egan. You know what I mean? Like that's my guy. You know what I mean? But I think when it comes to certain things that, the Breonna Taylors, the George Floyds, the Omar, you know what I'm saying? That depending on that topic, then it's like, I hate white people. Like, I think it really depends on the topic of conversation. I think that this newer generation, I'll give you the perfect example. Going to jail during the civil rights movement was terrible. Was terrible. Like, people were scared. Police was beating on you. You might disappear. Your family might get it next. But then during the civil rights movement, when it finally caught fire, they flipped it and made going to jail a rite of passage that you were fighting for your beliefs. So then Dr. King's getting arrested, Rosa Parks getting arrested, the busing situations, like people are just getting arrested, overflowing the jails because like you guys are not gonna stop us from believing what we believe, right? So that's that logic, right? So then now they flip the fear and the negativity that came from going to jail and they turned it into something positive. This new generation is kind of doing the same thing when it comes to racism. Like nigga is such an acceptable term now. It's kind of like saying, what's up, my brother? What's up, my nigga? Like it's to the point now where this generation uses it so interchangeably that it's almost like you're going to hear it in a conversation full of Black people. You will absolutely hear it. And I feel like what they're doing is they're using all of the hate that they gave and they're spinning it to be like, okay, cool. It doesn't faze me no way. Oh, you want me to be a nigga? Cool. Hey, what's up, nigga? Like, I feel like that's what they're doing, which in a sense, I think is, again, it happened in the 60s. It happened during civil rights. It's happening now. It's going to happen again with whatever the case is. It's kind of a part of growth and acceptance. So do I think they're more racist? I think it really just depends. I think that I think this newer generation just finds very cool ways to make an uncomfortable situation comfortable. That's what I think. I think we find a very cool way to make an uncomfortable situation comfortable. Perfect example would be Hoochie Daddy shorts. Let's just use those, right? Because they are called dad shorts. Like older guys, especially older white men, they wear shorts usually above the kneecaps anyway. My uncles, my aunt, you know what I'm saying? People wear shorts. For our culture, though, especially like when Michael Jordan came out in the 90s, he was one of the first to have basketball shorts under the knees. Like he kind of started that trend. Then Allen Iverson came around. His joints was like at his ankles. You know what I'm saying? Remember in the early 2000s, that's my favorite time era, like 2001, 2002, 2003. Dudes had white 5X, 4XL t-shirts, just everything just so long and big. And that was kind of like the fashion statement. And then now the culture and millennials took that and they spun it. So now everything is tailor fit, everything is slim fit, everything is like above the knees to an extent. And it's kind of like, all right, so they took something that was often, what it was for that time period, and we just made it our own. And in our culture, that appearance of being too tight, too short, too tailored, you either came across metrosexual, homosexual, you came across, not from around here, whatever the case was for the culture, because, hip hop culture could be toxic. whatever the culture was, it came across, and then we spun it, and it's Hoochie Daddy season. We out. So do I think the millennials are racist? I think that
less racist, less
racist. I think that they're more open and acceptable depending on the topic of conversation.
Yeah.
But I think that if you get them uncomfortable enough, I think you will see and hear what they're really thinking behind closed doors. I think millennials is a generation that doesn't really enjoy. I think we're a turn-up generation. I think this is a generation of fun, freedom, exploration. I don't think this is a generation like the civil rights movement generation where it was just like, give me free or give me death.
Right.
I think this generation is more so like, oh, I don't need to work for 30 years to make $1 million. I could just do it by opening up an OnlyFans page. Oh, sign me up. So I hope I answered that question.
No, you did. And I'm gonna give you homework because I know you be researching stuff. So I want you to know. I want you to look up like how they quantify even statistics on racism and see if younger generations are less racist. We'll chat about that on the next time I have you on the show. Okay.
Get me back. I'm in here. Get me back.
Okay. All right. So from there, we both, for all of you who may or may not know, I also work in the criminal justice field, and so, like Jude said, and I didn't. My touches with the other side of the criminal justice system weren't as long or as varied, but I touched it. Okay, I'm not gonna act like I didn't touch it because I did. And it's so funny because I think back to situations where, like, you don't even, there is, of course, and I'm a believer. So like, I have like these scriptural references, like, they have this scripture about danger seen and unseen, that you've been protected from dangers you didn't even know were coming. And so I remember, hanging out with people who were, like carrying firearms and taking me to places that were not necessarily safe, or being in a space where, police were called to a place where I was hanging out. And I tell you, if not for Jesus, I swear to God, like, who knows, because you could just be with somebody and get caught up because you with somebody who got something, or you just in the car, right? So I
absolutely.
All the times that I could have ended up in a very different situation than I was. And even like, I did like petty stuff. Like, I had a little short rebellious streak where I was just a thief for no reason. It's not even like we were broke or like super poor, but I was just stealing stuff just because. I was just a rebel. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. I have a past. Don't do that to me. Okay.
Oh my God.
So
who are you? Oh my God.
But God. So I just think about like all of the bad decisions I made, but it also gives me a lot of compassion when we're dealing with people who are involved in the criminal justice system, because one of the reasons why, like, even before I joined the criminal justice system professionally, like, I always work with the homeless, like volunteering and people who, who have mental health issues. And so that's the stuff that I do now. But what I realized about the population of people who are justice involved is that a lot of them are seen as kind of like throwaway people. Their families have given up on them. The system has given up on them. You know what I mean? They've had a lot of chances, right? Like, and by the time we see them, they have a rap sheet that's several pages long. They have, they may have, especially, you might see them a little bit sooner because you maybe dealing with probation cases. But for folks who are on my side, they might have started off with a juvenile record that has now transitioned into their adulthood. So by the time I've seen them, they have burned a lot of bridges, and people are much less willing to take you know what I mean? Like, you've been in this. I don't know why you can't get out, but you've been in this. And what I think is a beautiful thing about having people like us in this space to, one, I am definitely with you with trying to get to spaces where we're affecting policy, and we're affecting whole systems, right? And we're affecting whole agencies. But it is also so important to like be able to talk and touch people and say, hey, I know you messed up, but you're okay because you're still here. Like, I have to have that conversation almost every day. I get calls from people who are currently incarcerated who may or may not get out. I'm talking to guys on the street who trying to get off supervision, like, Miss Cunningham, what can you do? I'm trying to get off. And so it is important that whether you're just as involved or not, like, people need a lot of chances, right? They need what I call basically grace. Like, as someone who in my own personal life has made a lot of bad decisions, don't do that to me. Don't you do that. Don't you do that. Don't you do that. As someone who has made a lot of bad decisions, I am so glad that, like, people didn't give up on me. And so, right, because that could have looked a lot different. And so I extend that same grace to the population of people we work with. So I know you've done like direct supervision.
Yep. So with me, it was shout out my first chief, Carmen Gomez, man. I would not have been here if it wasn't for her. Because I'm telling you, she should have got rid of me. Like within my probationary period, she should have got rid of me. When I entered my career being a group home manager for state awarded kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of like my way into the door out of college. It was tough, not so much because of the workload, but it was more so of the emotional connections you make with these kids. Now you're talking about 12, 10, 13-year-old boys that are awarded the system because parents, incarcerated, no next of kin, runaways, adoptions, foster kids, or whatever. So then, like, when you start seeing them, you kind of see a little bit of you in that. Then I left being a group home and I ended up going to DYS, the Department of Youth Services, where I was the unit supervisor for the Metro Pretrial.
And is this the same DYS that you might have been connected to when you are you?
Yeah, but we ain't gonna talk about that though.
Okay. No, I think it's beautiful. That's a full circle moment.
Yeah, it's a full circle for sure. And then you start talking about things like I remember one time there was like they filled the unit up. It was like a hot summer, and we had like 4 different gangs on the unit, right? Mm-hmm. And it was like at one point in time, it'd be like, yo, bottom tier left side be out for a half hour. Then we gotta put them back in. Then bottom tier right side comes up because it was just too many. There's too many, and we're not. And the thing about Boston is that it may not be like the West Coast where you have huge gangs. Boston, I think, is more dangerous because you got legitimately street gangs on every other corner. Like, you can literally be on the street, throw a rock over a set of house, and hit a whole nother gang. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like they was just like, this is their way of establishing camaraderie. You know what I'm saying? And that's what they do. So I remember at DY, you know what I'm saying? Things popped off. Riot happened on the unit. It was like a 20-man fight.
Oh, no.
20-man fight. Yeah, it got crazy. These fights usually last anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. But when you're in it, it feels like forever. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, these kids ain't going to be scrapping for no more than 5. They get tired. You know what I'm saying? They just get tired. Yeah, you get tired separating it. You know what I mean? You got to rely on, like, your man strength to kind of separate them after a while. So, like, it was like, yo, we hit the all call, CERT team comes down, we're breaking bodies apart, woo, 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 woo. And then, like, I'm sitting here screaming on the unit, and I have a loud voice. Like, I can project my voice. So we're out here screaming on the unit, and I'm like, everybody locked in. So then now they're, like, kicking their doors, and they're sitting here, like, you know, they're being kids, and they're in lockup, and they're kicking their doors. And then I said, all right, y'all want to play these games? Cool. I turned the TV off. I think it was like they were watching Love and Hip Hop or something. You know, they're watching something. A bunch of teenage boys. They want to see girls. I switched it over to the Lion King. It was on like TNT or something like that. Then the original Lion King, 1994 Lion King.
There you go. Right? There you go.
You know what I mean? Not the new one, the original. And all of the unit is pissed. Like, yo, take this shit off. Like, take it off. It's pissed.
And then I promise you, within like probably like 20 minutes, it's like, yo, shut up, I can't hear the TV. Right? And then you be like, yo, Simba's a goon. Or, oh, they murked Mufasa, bro. What happened to the pig, bro? Oh, the pig, that's my guy. And I was just like, it'd be full because I'm like, I literally, we just ran through 20-man riot. And now these kids are enjoying the Lion King. Like that, I always tell that story because it's like, yo, these are kids. Like,
yeah,
they're being.
Oh wait, your sound cut out. I can't hear you. Nope, nothing. Did your earpieces die? Da, 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 da. Let's see. Say something. Nope, no sound. You going to put me on.
You know what? There we go. I'm gonna put you on.
Yeah.
So then similar to like what you were talking about when you were saying like compassion fatigue and the fact that people, it's like, listen, you've been around this block way too many times. I can't help you if you don't want to help yourself.
Right.
That was that moment when I was just like, yo, these kids can't help themselves. Like they're kids. Like it's not they're not them. It's not their job to help themselves. It's our job.
Right.
I ended up, and then I went to DYS. From DYS, I went over to the sheriff's department, adult facilities. That was a little bit different. It was more so like now we're dealing with grown men and women. Like y'all should be able to help yourselves if you want to help. But then it starts realizing like they really can't help themselves because there's no resources in the hoods. And then the resources that they do have in the hood is already, you know what I'm saying, that it's referral based, which means that they're probably already filled by, you know, clinical referrals, jail referrals, prison referrals, you know, school referrals. So it's kind of like, then those get crowded and overpopulated. So then maybe they really can't help. And now we all know the prisons and the jail systems is the new mental health facilities.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like, then you kind of go like, why does this person keep coming back? Well, because he really has some issues, my man. Like, like really has issues. So then I think that my biggest takeaway always was like coming from where I came from and being the person that I used to be. It's kind of like I see it every day, and it was kind of like, man, I know the whys, and I think that I always keep that in the back. Don't get me wrong, man. Sometimes you just be like, again, like you again, like my man, do me a favor, kick over a mailbox, right? Because that's federal. And I don't need to see you at county no more because you'll just be going to federal. So just kick over a mailbox and just sit there and wait for the police. Because I'm tired of seeing you here every other month. Just kick over a mailbox. And the federal accommodations are way better than county. So just go. You know, don't get me wrong. I have my moments like that. After a while, it's more like, I know I understand the why. So I think for me, it's always been the why that has allowed me to not go too far into I can't deal with you anymore because you don't want to help yourself.
Right.
I think it's always been the why. And I think once you start looking at the why people behave the way they do, when you start breaking the psychology behind it and you start breaking down like the foundational, and I think that's one thing that people fail to realize. Foundationally, people have traumas and issues, and implicit bias makes a very, very heavy burden for people to try to get over. Like in your mind, if you believe that police officers have always been bad, that when you grow up, you're going to have a hatred for law enforcement, which then turns into a hate for authority, which then can become a hatred for your supervisors and your bosses because they're an authority figure. They're your spirit, which then affects your employment, which then makes you unemployable.
Right.
So, and like there's literally, if you can understand the why, you're human, you're gonna have your days when you're like, I'm not dealing with these people. But if you can understand your why, then I think those days of I'm not dealing with people start to limit yourself. And you just gotta learn how to take mental health breaks. You gotta learn to
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that I carry with me that has been, because I've been in the work 20 years now, and everybody's bottom looks different. Like you look at some people and be like, this ain't telling you that you need to, and no, not for them. Not for them. Their bottom might be 2-3 years from now, or, and the wonderful thing is for me, and thank you, Jesus, that he always gives me like, all I need is like I need one nugget. I need only one person. And I'd be like, okay, I can point to this one person and I'm good. Like, the other 200 people I couldn't help, but this guy right here,
I'm good.
He texts me every day. I get a text every Thursday from this guy. So, I mean, I have, and it's not just one, I have several people who are I hang my hat on these success stories who, and for them, some of them, it was a long time. There was one gentleman, before he changed course and ended his what I call relationship with the criminal justice system, that's about 12-13 years of like back and forth with him. And I'm just like, Mr. So-and-so, Mr. Doe, we here. But now he's out living his life. He's like, oh yeah, me and the wife are going out of town for the weekend. So, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. What I generally do is when people are no longer under the criminal justice system, I make them take me to lunch. I'm like, I put in some work for you, get you a job, take me to lunch.
I'm expensive.
You thought that was free? It's not. It's not. When you done, we can't do it while you on supervision, because that's a conflict of interest. But when you finish and you successful and I helped, you taking me out to eat.
I say that all the time. I'm like, yo, my man, next week I want a bottle. Right? I want a bottle. I drink brown liquor. I want a bottle because your ass stressed me out for 2.5 years, bro. Like I say that too.
Absolutely. All right, so we are coming up on an hour. You see how quickly that went? That was quick. So I want you to leave us with a parting. Let me see. If you could speak to the younger you who is still out there, right? There are younger yous in your communities and communities across the nation, across the planet, because you looks like you in Russia, looks like you in Africa, looks like you in Asia, right? Because sometimes not being able to see another way is, that's universal. That's universal. So if you could talk to you, what would you say?
Don't start too late to build a relationship with God. Don't wait until you halfway neck deep in the mud. Don't wait until all the traumas and past, personal relationships, and girlfriends, and sisters, and cousins, and workplace trauma, and all of the racial things that you'll see on World Star, on the news. Don't wait for all of that to bind you for you to hit rock bottom before you build a relationship with God. And whoever God is for you, it doesn't, like, let me even rephrase that, not God, but a higher power. Let me say that. I know some people, but don't wait until you in your 30s to develop a relationship with a higher power, because what happens is when you start to develop that relationship, things start to fizzle out and in place for you. Yeah. And it'll make sense. Trust me, it sounds like it won't make sense, but it will eventually start making sense, and you'll figure it out.
Absolutely.
Be you. Everybody else will adjust, but be you with God.
Amen. And that's the final word on today. Yeah. I will include Jude David's contact information. So if anybody you wanna book him for one of your inspirational, y'all out here doing stuff,
throw that plug out there.
Your people, I'm gonna put all that when when I post this for next week, I probably will post like a snippet beforehand. And I'll put your socials and the ways to contact you. So
yeah, follow
David,
me. Slide in my DMs, y'all.
slide in the DMs. Slide in his DMs. Be respectful. Be respectful.
That
go ahead.
block button happens real fast.
But go ahead and slide. So I appreciate you, Jude. I love you already. You're already in my heart. So that's it.
Hold on, we going to Houston. Remember, let's do it.
Listen, you already know it's on. Listen. That's a side thing. Don't y'all worry about what we're gonna be doing.
Hey, don't worry about that.
Don't worry about that.
Call Ron. Call everybody up. Call Kami. We here.
So I love y'all. So again, this was another bold and beautiful podcast from When Christians Speak Talk Radio. And have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to our broadcast. We look forward to introducing young talent and sharing exciting stories with our listeners around the world. So if you have a gift, talent, story, or information to share with us, spoken word, poetry, book, or song to share, if you're an entrepreneur or musician, please contact us at bnbwcstr2016@gmail.com or on any of our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.